Good afternoon. Welcome to, I think this is the last session for the day, so we made it through. It's a good thing. My name is Robin Holmes, and I serve as the Vice President for Student Life at the University of Oregon. I'm in Husky country, so hopefully it's okay. And my presenters have been dropping like flies. There's supposed to be three of us. They're not here. So I'm going to do my best, and it's
well, I think we should applaud you for
Well, I know that Ellen Taylor, who is the AVP here and directs the Council Center and some other areas, she called me this morning and she came down with a bug, so I knew she wasn't going to be here. She was our convener, and then the second presenter, who I don't know actually, I don't know what happened. So what we were going to do, we wanted to show you kind of a little bit of a compare and contrast of three different institutions, University of Oregon, University of Washington. I believe the other presenter was going to present from a community college. In terms
she will
of,
be here.
What's that?
She will be here.
She will be here. Okay,
She will be here.
Good. Okay, great. Thank you for that. To kind of show how we have started to implement changes and resources regarding responding to sexual assault. And we wanted to show you, from different perspectives, because what I have found in talking with lots of colleagues and going to conferences like this is that everyone's doing it a little bit differently. I was even listening at the end of the last session here that depending on the type of institution you're at, you have different resources, different organizational structures, and so I expect there are a lot of differences among us, but there are some similarities. But the part of my presentation, which was really supposed to be a kind of a 15-minute each showing of our basic structures, is to show how drastically and how rapidly our resources and our staffing have changed over just a couple of years. And before I even left the campus, there was a vote that's going to be happening in the University Senate where they're actually voting to add more resources, which is ironic because usually faculty talk a lot about administrative bloat, and they made a proposal that they wanted us to open another separate office to the tune of $500,000. And when we added it up, we think it's closer to $2 to $3 million. They're underestimating just what that would cost. So that's on top of what I'm going to show you today that we've already been doing. So lots of institutions are responding to and trying to keep up with the legislation that's coming from Washington, as well as from our local, regional, and state legislators, trying to keep up with the federal government compliance issues and all the things you have to do there. Our campus advocates and activists who also are very, very motivated and see that there's a lot of attention on this issue now, and so a lot of us are feeling like we have to respond to that group. To students who are also quite activated, parents, there have been several institutions that have been in the news who are part of the 70 that are being investigated, and we all should knock on wood because we're all right around the corner from that happening as well. There's really, in some cases, there's no rhyme or reason as why some are getting investigated and some aren't. Those institutions are experiencing precipitous drops in their enrollment as a result of that type of kind of disappearing down on the institution. So although I'm just going to talk about this in terms of staffing and time and things we've been doing, I really want to emphasize that it's very, very difficult to add up all of the costs associated with us trying to respond to this very, very difficult issue. An issue that really is a societal issue, and it's been around since the beginning of time, unfortunately, and we haven't been able to solve it at the beginning of time. We probably will be having this same conference with all of you in 50 years talking about it. Well, maybe not all of you. But there goes that evaluation. Presenter insulted us. You don't know all night. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about this from our perspective and what we've been doing. And I want to start with something that really kind of shifted the ball for us in terms of resources. And I imagine in Washington, some of this will be the same for you, although, again, I'm from a different state, and so we have some different legislative responsibilities and roles. So at the University of Oregon, all of our employees are required reporters. And so that means that if a student or staff member or faculty member comes to any of the required reporters and discloses information about prohibited discrimination and harassment, then they are to report that information into the correct areas. Also, if an employee, whether we're on campus or off campus, have credible information about child abuse that might be occurring on our campus by the state law, we're mandatory reporters of that information as well. So, so 2 years ago, this rolled out with a thud on our campus, even though in reality we've always been expected to report prohibited discrimination. It was the first time that the president actually sent out a memo saying, I'm just letting you all know, you're on notice that you're all required reporters. And that is huge. It's huge because it means that if an employee just fails in that duty, and there was a lawsuit in which there was an expectation, I told you information, you're a faculty member, and you didn't do anything with that information, you might not be indemnified if that lawsuit were to come to fruition and you needed to be represented by the university because you haven't followed policies and procedures which came from the university president. So that, like I said, has gone over like a lead balloon on our particular campus because folks feel as though they don't really understand how to really do that. Some of our employees are also designated as campus security authorities for the purpose of clery. So these are our police officers and other folks who have to report activities that would be reportable by the Clery Act. I also have a little asterisk here because we do have confidential reporters on the campus. We actually added several more confidential reporters just last year, and that's going to be your mental health professionals, your health professionals, folks who by statute are able to keep privileged information, whether they're in a therapy session or seeing someone, gynecological exam, or a nurse, a clergy person, psychiatrist. Those folks are able to keep confidence. So they're confidential reporters. So a student does have a choice that if they would rather go to someone who's a confidential reporter because they don't want to report, they can also do that as well. We have several offices that are designated to respond to reports of sexual misconduct. One of the things that we've really been working on our campus is for these offices to be working together very, very well, even though they report to different places in the university. So again, I would imagine this is similar in many of your institutions, especially the 4 years. An office of affirmative action. We have an office that directly deals with sexual violence, the counseling and testing center, the health center, student conduct, dean of students. All those offices are within my portfolio. And then, of course, we have the police department. So these are the various offices that are usually involved in some way if there is issue of sexual misconduct. And we took an approach that I think is very commonplace. We tried to set the vision from the very, very top, having messages oftentimes coming from our president or provost or myself or others in central administration about what it is that we're trying to do in terms of keeping the campus safe. We tie that vision of safety and expectation of respect to the university values. They go hand in hand. You know, what it means to be a duck is someone who is going to be respectful of others. We created core teams to carry out aspects of the implementation. No one group can handle all of this themselves. You have so many different constituencies, so you need really good, strong core teams to carry out various aspects of the implementation. Of course, we secured resources. You need one-time resources and you need recurring resources. One of the things that we've been trying to avoid doing is to take money and throw it at something one time and then walk away. All of us know, all the research shows, it's not very effective and it's probably a waste of money. But you do need one-time money to do certain things that may come up. But most importantly, you need to make sure those resources are recurring. We developed communication goals and targets. We've been trying to communicate effectively and ongoing. What's been really very, very difficult to stay up with is how often you have to keep communicating. You'll be in a meeting and people will look at you like this is the first time they've ever heard you talk about anything. And so you just have to realize you have to say it over and over and over again. You're going to get things like, well, I didn't know there was a website. Well, how do you report? Well, no one's ever told me how to report. I feel like there's no way we can report because no one's ever given us any information. Even though you've probably said it 500 times, you have to say it 5,000 times. And developing various types of communication methods. The way you communicate to your students, of course, is going to be very, very different than the way you communicate to the faculty. And lots of different types of ways of communicating as well. So this graphic, I just sat down at my computer, and then before I put this as a final slide, I actually sent it out to a couple of my staff, and they corrected things because I actually missed things or had things wrong. This is not exhaustive, and it's more for shock and awe. So truly, in 2012, of course, these weren't all the positions we had, but basically, these were the positions that we had in 2012 that had, something to do with, especially the prevention aspects of sexual assault. And I carried those positions over. In less than 2 years, this is what we have now, and it's going to grow. And it's still not enough in order to respond to the growing numbers. When we changed our reporting procedures regarding how a student would report a sexual assault, and when we changed to mandatory reporting, the year prior to that change, we had 14 reported cases of sexual assault. Now, you and I all know that 14 is nowhere near the number the school of 24,500 students would have, given the statistics that are out there. But it is a very underreported issue. The year that we changed to mandatory reporting, and we changed our reporting guidelines, we communicated with our students better, and put up a new website, we opened up a 24/7 hotline, we did a bunch of other stuff. That year we went to 154. We went from 14 to 154. This year we'll double it again. That's the amount of reported cases that have happened between 2012 and what will be 2015. So we are getting much better at encouraging and making it clear to students that they should report. 90% of those reported cases came because someone reported what happened other than the student. So in other words, the student came to see the faculty member. Faculty member said, you should report this. The student said yes or no to that reporting. The faculty member let whomever needed to know. Our Office of Sexual Assault and Support Services contacted the student. The student at that point has a choice. Do you want to report something that happened? Do you want resources from us? Do you want support from us? Do you want nothing at this point from us? And you'll contact us later or not at all. Most of the time when we reached out to the student proactively because we got the report from someone else, that student came into our system and then the process would actually begin. So it's been a huge change for us in terms of how many cases are coming in just because students are being reached out to proactively, always having that choice that if they don't want to go forward in the process, then the process can stop unless there is a risk to the entire campus, and then we have to make a different decision. Yes?
I'm curious if these are all new bodies on your campus, or are these existing people that have just been given additional responsibilities?
Because that's what universities do, right? The latter.
Yes.
They're new. With the exception of this person, we got the coordinator of sexual assault support services at the end of 2012, like 2013, she was hired. It's the first time we had someone who was dedicated just in that position. Prior to that, and she sits in the Dean of Students office, and prior to that, the Dean of Students, the Associate Dean of Students had a staff member that was working with her, but no one was really, that was their entire job. They had other parts of their job. So we created this position where this is all, she's the advocate for students. This is all she does. And then we launched the 24/7 hotline, and she persons that hotline. She now has become the director of this, and we hired a new person. So she's the only one that is not new on this list, besides these people here. The Title IX coordinator was here. These are all new. This one we haven't even hired yet. We have the money for it, so these are all new. Before it was just the Title IX coordinator doing all the investigation by herself, which is terrible. It's impossible, so now we have 2 more people that can help with that. Of course, the Director of Conduct and Community Standards, that person was here from before. We added a conduct investigator, so an investigator on the Dean of the student life side now as well. We added a special investigator in the police department, someone who had worked in our local Eugene Police Department as a lieutenant who investigated sexual crimes. So she retired from that position, and we snapped her up, and so now she's here and she can do investigations for us, but that's a new position. The Director of Fraternities for Life was here, and remember, they're doing a lot of training with our FSL community, but the Assistant Director wasn't, so that's a new position. This one's a new position. This one is not even hired, it's new, we have money for it. And then this is a team made up mostly of the counseling center staff, this interpersonal violence team. So almost all new positions. Yes?
You mentioned that students have the option to not receive
Yes.
support. Can they still get support services from
Absolutely.
the center and receive support even though they don't want to participate in the investigation?
Absolutely. The advocacy part is separate from the response part in terms of the legal law, those types of things, and even the conduct. So even though some of them sit in the same offices, they are separate. So that's a really great point. But of course, they can receive whatever support services they need, whether they go forward or not. We just have to make sure and document that they're making that decision, that they're not going to go forward. Yes?
That was sort of my question. I noticed that there's no advocates on this list, and just wondering if that got beefed up at all as this was happening.
These two are advocates.
Okay.
These two here are,
Okay.
yes, they advocate for the students. They go, if the student has to go to court or go to the police department, whatever they need to do, getting their classes changed, they're doing all that work for the students. So those are two advocates that the other places on campus. We have a women's center. They can get advocation in the health center or the counseling center. But those are the specialists. They're both social workers. This is what they do, which is working with people who have been sexually assaulted. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes.
Was there ever any thoughts about using outside investigators altogether?
Not until recently, when it's been talked about at other campuses, and so we are in those conversations right now. My own personal opinion is there's just not enough info out there yet. I feel like we do a good job. It's complicated. These cases are very, very complicated most of the time, and so I can't quite wrap my head around how that would all work with an outside investigator. So I'm really taking a wait and see attitude to see what some of our other colleagues are doing and how that's going. And if that seems like it's a better way to go, we'll go that way. But for now, I think we're going to stay where we are. Yeah. Yes?
Just drilling down into the list of that you have there in 2014, are all of those or most of those full-time employees voted for this?
They are all full-time employees except for the special investigator. She's about half-time, but her half-time is all toward investigating sexual assaults. Everyone else is completely full-time. Now, of course, some of them, like the conduct investigator and the student conduct person, they do they're doing all the conduct. They're not just doing sexual assault, of course. But these folks, this is all that they're doing. And not on this list, like I said, were the associate deans, other folks who are providing support to these folks. The main reason to show you the graphic is just, I don't think this is unusual with universities that are similarly situated to the University of Oregon. And every time another legislator decides to create another bill, or the federal government has another Dear Colleague letter or another compliance standard, it means more of these folks in order to deal with and make sure that the university is complying with all of those things. On the flip side of it, this was never enough. And my folks were drowning. And it took a high-profile case on our campus last year that got a lot of people's attention for people to start here, which again was both good and very welcomed and way overdue, because I was burning my folks out with the responses that they were needing to do. So it's great that we have more folks, but it does come with some issues. We almost lost our one of our staff members who does the substance abuse, because she's sitting in a one-person office and the sexual assault office is exploding with staff. And she's got herself and a graduate teaching fellow. And so all of our resources, I'm getting these resources that are tagged to go toward sexual assault. I can't say, thank you, Provost or President, for giving me those resources. Where should I put them? I need to put them where they have designated me to put them, which again, much, much needed. But it's really causing imbalances in the rest of my offices who feel like we don't understand. We're working our tails off too. 90% of sexual assaults occur as a result of alcohol use. Why aren't you putting some of those resources toward alcohol? And then secondarily, I don't know how your process is like, we go up against everyone else for resources once a year, and they're looking at student life and saying, geez, we added 8 positions in student life. You guys are good, right? And so it makes it very difficult for me to think about, my career center could really use another, because we've already received all these positions. Again, not to sound ungrateful, I'm very grateful really needed it, but it does make an imbalance across the university to have resources only going to one direction or one area. Some other efforts that we've been doing that, all those people then have to do a lot of work besides just responding to the students. We, like many schools, have mandatory assessments that our students participate in, so that means we need to do them, we need to follow the students, make sure that they're doing them, and then we need to look at the data, and all that takes time and effort. It also takes money. These cottage industries that have cropped up on the backs of higher education, boy, we all went in the wrong. We should have gone into making software programs, because we'd all be very rich right now. So we do Alcohol EDU and Haven. Haven is the companion of that looks at sexual assault behaviors and gives out information. We've had several task force. We just completed a video. We joined the It's On Us campaign. I'm assuming people are probably familiar with It's On Us, which is coming out of the White House. We wanted to do it, but we also wanted to put our own spin on it so that as we continue with our awareness campaigns, we can personalize it to the University of Oregon. So we made the video. We used high-profile athletes. All of them were very, very happy to do it. We used the president of the Panelists and the Fraternity Council. They were in the video as well. People that students would recognize who stood up and said, hey, ducks do something. They divert, they help people get out of the way, they say something, they don't just stand there. This is our community. Very, very powerful. We're playing it at all of our athletic events right now. That's the link for it. And it's gotten a really lot of positive play. We're moving toward a party registration program. We developed new websites and brochures. I told you about the hotline. Again, it's a 24/7 hotline. A student can call at any time during the day or night, and they will get a live person who will take their report, and if need be, they will go out and begin to respond to the student right away. And then we bought a software program, a CAN program for required mandatory reporter training for all staff and faculty. All staff and faculty had to take this training, regardless of who you were or how long you've been there. And you had to show proof that you had taken that. Again, a very expensive program to buy, implement, and then to deal with all the backlash when folks are mad, especially the law professors. You can't make us do this. But we did, and they did it. So this is just a screenshot from the website that we developed. One of the things, you can't really see it here, but in the very top corner there, we even thought about if someone were looking at this in the library, if they needed to get out of it really quickly because they didn't want someone to know they were looking at it, there's a kind of an escape button. They press that, the screen just goes away. But it's written for students, the students being the audience, so it's quick with pictures and it kind of gets them where they need to go, as well as the safe hotline number there. This is an insert again, thinking about, and I brought a couple of them, I didn't bring a lot, but trying to think about making it that step-by-step process that a student could easily navigate through. It's already a hard enough situation. You don't want the reporting to be so difficult that a student can't figure it out. Again, all of these things are costly, and you have to make sure that whatever you're doing actually is paying off for you. So our websites, our brochures, we are keeping stock of how well students are utilizing those, and if it's not working, we got to do something else. But we need to really be paying attention to it because these are very expensive things to do and to do them well. A couple other, I think, just important things to say from our vantage point, what we've been doing is that we changed our conduct code. We strengthened our language around consent. You're seeing that a lot in the legislature and other campuses. So we did that, we put it right in our conduct code because students are all responsible for whatever is in the conduct code, so that way we can say, look, this was in there and you didn't, so yes means yes, all of that. We eliminated panel hearings. The way our conduct code was set up, again, the faculty had responsibility for the conduct code, and it's been a source of tension for us, I think, in administration, because those who do implementation of conduct and those who theoretically think about it and talk about it sometimes are in different worlds. And so we had a situation where the accused student could decide, do they want to go to a panel hearing of a panel, or do they want to go to administrative conference and just speak with the conduct officer? Yet the accusing students had no choice. They were at the mercy of whatever process was going to happen was what the accused student decided. The other problem was our panel hearings had students on them, as many of our panels had in the past. And as you know, the best practices and the guidance is that students should not be on panels. that have, when it's regarding sexual assault. So we eliminated the panel hearings as a choice. Everything goes to administrative conference. If the student wants to appeal that, they can appeal that decision to me if they want to do that. So we no longer have the choice of the panel hearing. We shorten up the time frame of when the accused student has to respond, and we provide additional supports to the accusing students. Most of the time, the accused student would show up with their advisor, and their advisor would be an attorney, and the accusing student didn't have the money to have an attorney. Our student government provides attorneys legal services, but legal services only represents the accused student, doesn't represent the accusing student, right? Because they only represent students that have a conduct violation. Well, the accusing student doesn't have a conduct violation. So they had no attorney, free attorney to them. So we tried to balance that out for everyone. So what's next for us? We're going to develop a strategic plan and launch a more comprehensive unified campaign. We actually have already tried, we're doing that right now. What we found out when we had the big incident on the campus last year is that everyone's doing a lot of things. And with the intense media glare, people started running around thinking about doing even more things, which really scared me quite a bit. So I pulled all those people together, and we're doing a gap analysis. Actually, I'm hoping to get them next week to see where we're at, to see everything we're doing, when we do it, and actually developing a calendar that is externally focused. Everyone can see, you know, first 6 weeks of school, we do this. You know, during break, we do this. You know, or what are the departments that are doing all the things that they're doing? If we decide to go with MVP, green dot, blah, 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 whatever we're going with, we're all going with similar products so that we're giving the same messages out. So trying to organize it from the top as opposed to everyone running around. We have athletics doing all kinds of things over here. We have the Dean of Students Office doing things over here. We have Women and Gender Studies doing things over there. So we're trying to get all the folks together and do something much more strategic. We're also launching at the same time a comprehensive assessment of what is working. Again, thinking about cost and benefit. Communicate, communicate, communicate. I cannot overestimate that as part of your implementation. Partner with your research faculty. All of you have faculty who either have professional expertise or research expertise in some of these areas, and so partnering with them is something that we're trying to do. We're right now working very closely with our counseling psychology department. It's been very exciting, and we feel as though it's going to be a good partnership. Continue to secure those needed resources because things continue to cost money. And get your student leaders involved. We have not been able to do that at this point. Candidly, I will tell you, is because last year was such a difficult year. There was a lot of activism, and our students kind of went over to the side of the activism, and partnering with administration would have seen as not you work being a good activist. I think as that dies down, there will be a better partnering, but that is something that's really important. Students have to talk to other students about this. We cannot be with them, thank goodness, 24/7, right? We can't, we don't want to be with them, you know, and we couldn't even if we wanted to, which would be really weird, but even if we wanted to, we couldn't even. You know, so they're at the party, they're doing whatever they're doing, they're making the choices that they're making. And we need to make sure that our students are armed with knowledge so that they can actually see, you know what, something's wrong. We launched that video I was telling you about during our, 2 weeks ago at one of the football games. It was homecoming. And so we had our parents there. And I was speaking at Parents Weekend, and a parent came up to me and he said, you know, I saw your video. I said, oh, what did you think? He was like, I thought it was really, really great. I want to tell you what I did. Because I was walking back from the game at the University of Oregon. We have a tradition of we walk over the bridge, over the river. There's a bridge into the football stadium. It's about an 8-minute walk. And while people are walking to the stadium, oftentimes there's things that are going on. He was walking back from the game. He was with his daughter, and he noticed that there was a woman there, a young woman. He said she looked underage, but she was very intoxicated. She had a very expensive camera on her shoulder. She was weaving as she was walking, all right? And it was getting to be pretty dark, actually. So he did two things, or just was like, oh, I love you. He did two things. He reached over to his daughter and goes, do you see her right there? She's in trouble. She's walking by herself. She's obviously drunk. She has a very expensive camera on her. Nothing good is going to happen here. You cannot ever do that. Look what that looks like. And the daughter's like, I'm not going to do that to her. And he goes, we need to go up to her. So he did bystander intervention right there. He saw us talking about bystander intervention, do something. Ducks, do something. He goes, I did something. You know, I could have hugged him right then and there. So those are the types of things that, you know, we really want to have happen and make sure those messages are getting out there. Continue to have things like internal and external reviews. It's really important for you to be able to understand and see how things are working or not working. You need to not be afraid to do internal and external review. We have 3 of them going on right now. I have an internal review in Fraternity and Sorority Life, an external review in that same department in the summer. We have a presidential external review of athletics and student life going on right now. There's the University Senate external review going on. Those things are important, and every couple of years, just like accreditation, you should be reviewing, having outside people coming in saying, how are things looking? What do your students think? What do your faculty think? What do your staff think? How safe does the campus feel? Are your programs hitting where you think they will hit? Again, getting back to the implementation economics, of course, that's going to cost you resources as well. And then I'll end on what you also need to invest in, and that is media training. Probably one of the issues that was the most difficult for us at the University of Oregon following the high-profile incident was we were careened in the media. It was very painful to be a part of knowing what was going on and then hearing what was reporting and saying, what? That's not what's happening. And so making sure that the top-level executives have had really good media training so that when they are expressing whatever they're expressing, they can do that in ways that are effective and that are persuasive and calm people down and do all the things that need to happen. So that media training for all your top-level people or anyone who's going to be, that the media is going to be lurking around, they descended on our campus. They lurked around the corner. They found out who the student was who had suffered the sexual assault. They stood outside her residence hall, attempted to get in, to talk to her friends. It involved our athletic team, one of our athletic teams, so they were all over anyone that even looked like an athlete. They were trying to talk to them. It was a circus. And so having that media training, these are the things that inoculate you when something big happens. Most of the time, you're just dealing with the regular stuff, but when something big happens, there's not a lot of time to figure out what you need to do. So doing those things ahead of time are really important. Questions or comments? Yeah.
You're not the first person I've heard say something bad happened and then resources came.
Mm-hmm.
Knock on wood, nothing bad yet has happened,
Yay.
but yet deaf ears to resources. Suggestions there?
But you said, what was the last
Deaf
part?
ears to resources.
Right. Make a bad thing happen? No,
No,
that's not right. No.
University of Oregon.
Yes. No, really, that was going to be my answer. I think you look at 3 or 4 institutions that are similar to your own and see, do they look the same or different? And I do think that it's convincing to central administration to say, well, if something bad happens, we had 1 person and our sister institutions had 10 people, 12 people, 8 people. That's not going to, the optics of that are going to be really, really bad. So benchmarking yourself with your other institutions might be the best way to go.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
Did I understand you saying that your student government pays for attorneys for people who have been accused of violating the student conduct?
They pay for legal services. There's a legal services office that's supported by the incidental fees that students pay. That's correct. And about a lot of things, whether landlord, tenant issues, or lots of things.
So it's not strictly for the
No,
student conduct
no,
process?
no. No, it's not strictly for the conduct process. Oftentimes it's used for the conduct process. Regardless of the violation, they may utilize legal services, but it's also used for things even outside the university.
Is that an ombudsman's office?
No, these are not. These are attorneys. It's not an uncommon thing at four-year publics.
Yeah, I think there's.
Have
I'm
legal
curious
services.
then, now you're talking about now administration or the university or whoever is going to pay now for an attorney for the accused.
No, I didn't mean to imply that. We're not paying for an attorney for the accused. We don't pay for any of the attorney fees of any student. Our attorneys represent the University of Oregon, and as you know, students are not part of your university in that way. So they represent people who work at the university, but not the students. But our law school, we have a law school, and our law school has a domestic violence clinic, and they have other social services that they provide. And so we are making arrangements for those students to be able to get services through our law clinic. So that's what I meant by trying to make sure that they at least had, something, because they're still not going to be able to use the legal services when it's regarding a sexual assault. Yeah. And I've been, to be honest, I've been shamelessly pushing on that with our student body president. Like, does that seem right to you? There's something about that really seems unfair, that your fees would support only one half of this, and that's something we should really be thinking about. So, so far I haven't made a whole lot of inroads there, but that's the situation we're at right now. So we're trying to balance that out as much as we possibly can.
You need to give the victims talking to.
Yes, yeah, that's true. Good point. Yes.
So funding.
Yes.
So where has the money come from?
I have no idea.
Did you
We-
have OVW money at any point along the way?
Years ago,
Years
but that's not where this is coming from. This is
Yeah.
coming from our general fund.
Okay.
So we decided to fund this instead of fund something else.
Right,
Yep,
okay.
yep. I am, we just launched a capital campaign, and I do have capital campaign goals that include prevention, and so we will bring some private money to this, but that will probably take us another 2 to 3 years, and so I'm excited to think about what that will do to help with our prevention efforts, but these positions themselves came from general fund money. Yep. Yes.
So I'm working as legislative staff, and I guess one of my questions is, and I know you're different states and
Yes.
different requirements, but are there requirements that you find to be more expensive than they are useful? And like, what do those look like? What are things we want to avoid? And maybe if you have any ideas for which ones are very cost effective.
Mm-hmm.
That's a
Yes.
broad question.
It is. I think the one that bothers me the most would be the clery reporting. It's useless. I mean, all of us will say, if I took your clery report, probably like 0, 1, half. Nothing. It's just, they don't, but the reports themselves, ours was like 150 pages long. There's just a lot of reporting, and I don't even read it. I don't read it, I don't look at it, I don't even think about it, because it means nothing to our campus. It means nothing to the folks that work in the area. It's just we have to do it because the federal government says we have to do it. Then the fact that we have conflicting regulations, that's killing us. We got one branch saying this, we got one over here saying that. That's really very difficult as well. In Oregon, the governor's office is thinking about doing something similar to the California bill of the yes means yes, and so I've appreciated that they've actually talked to all the Title IX officers first before they launched something, because the things that they had in there were like, yeah, that's not so good. That's not going to work. It's going to cost a lot of money. There are many folks in the state who won't be able to afford to do that, and what are they going to do? So I'm hoping, keeping my fingers crossed, that they're going to listen to that feedback and not just kind of go on their own to do something. Yeah. So any reports are really the thing that I think are the most difficult at times. Yeah.
How you doing?
Okay, great. Did you have something on this? I did. Okay, good.
How you doing?
Good.
My name is Gayla Thomas. I'm the Director of Equal Opportunity Affirmative Action, Title IX and ADA at Eastern Washington University. And, I think a lot of us, I know I definitely speak for myself about the resources, because, I come from a 24-year military background to higher ed, many jobs in between. But what just baffles me is how, there's a requirement for all of these compliances from the federal government, but however, there's no money being dumped into higher education from the federal government to support the things that need to be done. So if you're on a campus, we have almost 15,000 students and 1,400 faculty and staff. One person, in collaboration with others, of course, that's how we do it.
Right.
But even still, when you have EO investigations to do, you have affirmative, none of that stops, and then you have all this other stuff.
All the other stuff, right.
So I kind of wish that before, as you said, they would have talked to the appropriate people before they just started the knee-jerk.
Right.
And it just exploded, and now everybody is confused because things just keep coming out one behind the other. And so people are just, and I hate to say it, but you know, for a lot of us, it may take the news to get our attention, to
Right.
show the administration that we need more positions.
You're right.
Get the money from somewhere.
Right. You just
You
have to
know,
show them
make it
one
happen.
of your investigations for them to realize that it is not humanly possible for one person to do the investigations on the campus of your size. I mean, these investigations take weeks
Yes, they
and
do.
hours and hours and hours of interviewing, writing, you know, all that stuff. You know, all the people you have to consult with before you even say whatever you're going to say. It's humanly impossible. Yet these reports and the way the investigations have to happen with more and more expectations and rules, which make them even more complicated, it's not stopping. And, you know, so we need, you know, 6 and 7 of you just to keep up with that at a college of your
Thank
size.
goodness for, you know, the Dean of Students Office and, you know, the Health and Wellness Prevention guys, Campus Police, because we
Right.
all work really closely together.
You
But
have
even
to.
still,
Right.
you know, you hold the title, you
It's
have
on
the
you.
responsibility.
That's right.
So,
That's
you
right.
know, if I have the responsibility, I want the resources that go with it.
I
So
agree.
I just think we all have to make enough noise until that happens.
We do.
Because legislators and everyone else need to hear that.
Right.
You know, if you want things to be done correctly and we're not doing knee-jerk reactions, then give us what we need to do our jobs.
You're right. You're right.
I want to just start by talking a little bit about how we moved.
You want to do it for you?
Yeah, would you mind? From a community college perspective, or at least from my perspective, as the Vice President of Student Affairs, going exactly to where you went with who's covering the costs of financing what we need to help our students. And I feel like that commitment comes from the top. And so I need to be in a place of being committed to this work. And being committed to this work means that I need to think beyond compliance. I need to think more strategically about this is an ethical and a legal obligation, but it is also about our mission, which is providing access, making sure our students are achieving their goals, and making sure that they get out into the workforce or transfer into a four-year institution where they're going to be successful. So the only way for that to happen is that we need to see this, that it's not just about being compliant, but it's also about what is our mission and what are we expected to do to make sure we're serving our students. I also see this as a social justice component in that it has to be grounded in this a systematic approach. We need to really think about our systems and what our systems currently look like and how do we shift our systems to meet the needs of our students. I guess it's just moving on its own. I like to move too, so I'm good. And then this whole concept about thinking about power and privilege, and I apologize for stepping in late, maybe you've already kind of highlighted some of this. But I think that it's really important when we're talking about the economic impact to our campuses and we're talking about personnel that are needed to successfully help our students, and as well as what are the budget needs. We need to think from that perspective of a social justice model, and we need to think about how power and privilege influence that. So I was at a workshop a couple of days ago at a strategic enrollment management meeting, and there was a whole conversation around how student affairs, student services, actually has more resources coming to them and more positions than any place else on campus. How many of you hear that? Okay, I understand that we have faculty salary and classified and other represented staff who there are issues around their salaries. And I understand that we have significant cuts to our budgets from the state. But the reality is, if you really look at that, the majority of our campuses have somewhere between 7 and 11% of the overall budget of the institution. So when you're really talking about how much money is allocated for us to provide the support services necessary for our students to stay enrolled and for them to complete their goals, we're talking about a small amount of money. So we need to keep advocating and keep talking about what is it that we need to do for students to be successful. When we think about the community college piece and our students, and this is the same for all of you, these are probably your students as well, we have traditional students who are with us. They come from high school and transition to our campuses. We have first generation students whose parents have no idea how to navigate the system, and so they come to us and they're trying to figure out how to navigate the system. And if they have a situation that comes up, where do they go? Who are their resources? How do they find out how they can be successful? We have an adult student population. We have a group of what I would call independent students. Those are students that are kind of swirling. They move from campus to campus. They're not sure what they want to do. They know that they have some career goals in mind, and they're very independent for the classwork that they're taking. We have dual enrolled students, and I came in right at the cusp of when you were saying the transition from, I think, 2012 to currently. I would say, in regards to the reporting that's happened at Green River, the dual enrolled students are high school students who are at the high school and also taking classes at the college, are where I'm seeing the most significant issues around stalking and around sexual assault and behaviors that are not appropriate. And so just a week ago, I had a female student come and report that she was in the photography darkroom, and she had a partner that she was assigned to the class. And while she was in the darkroom, the individual, a male student, approached her and said, "I know you want to be with me." He kept antagonizing her and talking with her, and he kissed her. He grabbed her from behind, he turned her around, and he kissed her. And she went to her faculty member right away. And her faculty member went directly to the male student and said to the male student, "This is not appropriate." And then guess what happened? The male student started texting her saying, "I will hurt you for what you just did." So she went back to the faculty member. Now the faculty member says, "Okay, let's go to campus safety." Yeah. So they walk down to campus safety together, and then the ball starts rolling in regards to what happens next. Both of them running START students, both of them who were enrolled though at our college, so I had to also involve the high school in that conversation. They were underage, so the parents were involved in that conversation. So we're seeing more and more students. So police also were involved, and there was some significant discussions that occurred after that point. So I think this is an area where we're not just talking about our college students, we're talking about high school students who are coming to our campuses, who are on our campuses now, and there's work to be done on how we partner with the high schools and how we talk about sexual assault and harassment. I know I was in a session earlier that talked about international students. Probably many of you have international students, so there's a lot of different levels in regards to their cultural knowledge and coming here. What does that look like? What kinds of training are we doing? Many of the community colleges in the state of Washington have housing, so we know that's also an area. And I know at least at our community college, we have a lot of students in poverty. And so resources and lack of resources and how do they navigate the system is a challenge. And so finding ways that we can support and provide those resources are crucial. We are in the process of implementing what we are calling participatory governance. And that means there are representatives from all different stakeholder groups across the campus who are meeting on a regular basis to address issues that are happening at the college. So some of you may have a shared governance model. We have what we're calling a participatory governance model. And we are doing exactly what we were talking about this morning, integrating into our system our policies and procedures around sexual assault. What does this look like? So we started with a task force, and that task force has been meeting, I want to say, since February of 2014. And they are really driving a lot of the issues on the campus that need to come forward and be addressed. They're making recommendations, they're evaluating and assessing our progress, they are determining if we need to pivot or shift resources from one area to another area. And I think we're going to keep seeing that, right? Because we have limited resources, so we're going to be in a position where we need to move monies from maybe a program that would be perceived as a luxury to a program that may be seen more as of a necessity. And with financial aid compliance and with Title IX compliance and a whole number of other mandates coming down, we're needing to shift what has been oftentimes a benefit to students in regards to engagement to being in a position where we need to meet those resources to address compliance. So the task force has what I would consider 4 major focus areas. You've heard about them, you know about them, you're probably all doing them on your campuses. Educating students, that prevention component, the policy component, and how we respond. I know you said you were updating your WAC codes. We're in the same process of doing that. or they're not WAC for you, but your codes. We're in the process of updating our WAC codes to make sure we're in alignment and complying. So that has been an interesting process. We've held 5 forums. We've done a lot of work with students. We've taken in a lot of feedback on what we need to make sure we have in our policies and our processes to make sure that we are following what we need to do regarding mandates. So these are just off the top of my head. These things that we're experiencing on our campus in regards to economic impacts. Prioritizing staffing and positions. So right now, I currently have a position that's open for the Title IX compliance and judicial officer. We've not had that at community college level or at Green River anyway. In fact, I think we're one of few campuses that originally had a judicial officer that wasn't the vice president or wasn't the dean, an actual judicial officer. And now we're in the process of moving that judicial officer to also take on additional responsibilities. So we've also looked between student affairs and human resources about what are our roles and what staffing is needed in human resources and what staffing is needed in student affairs. And so how do we define what those roles look like, and how does that clearly detail and outline the policies that we have in place so students clearly understand where they go if they're being harassed by a faculty member or staff member versus if they're being harassed by another student. We know that it takes a lot of leadership buy-in, and I consistently add to the executive team's agenda issues and concerns around sexual assault in Title IX. And so I would encourage you to speak to your president about making sure that's on the agenda on a regular basis for the senior executive to be discussing. Are there grant opportunities that are out there? We have a fantastic grant writer, and we're doing a lot of work around what are some grants, or if there are grants that are related to workforce training and development, how do we incorporate this piece into it, because it's an HR function. How can we combine that in some capacity? So thinking about grants that you have that are available to you or that your institutions are working on, how do you align what you're doing in regards to assault to also have a little piece, some monies, some pilot dollars that you can actually utilize to put in place new policies and procedures or to do training. We again have the task force piece. I think community partnerships is a piece that we all need to be exploring more. How do we work with other campuses that are within our region, that if they're bringing somebody to campus or they're piloting a training, how do we also utilize what they're doing on their campuses on our campuses? So we don't need to recreate the wheel. We don't need to pay to have a huge speaker to come in if we can have one speaker come in who maybe hits all 3 of our campuses or what have you. So thinking through what that can look like. And then how does that look in regards to sponsors? Can you find some sponsors that are out in the community who are willing to also help contribute to that? If you have branch campuses, I don't know about you, but we don't have all the services on our branch campuses that we have on the main campus. So how do you actually provide support to students who need that on the branch campuses versus on just the main campus? I'll go fast, I see my battery is low. For our campus, again, there's a whole marketing, you get in the queue and they'll let you know when your project comes up. Anybody have that? So we are working to create our own video in regards to what our process is in bystander. And that's taken a lot of time, and we're utilizing our marketing and communications team to do that. And so how do you get on their radar so that you get in the queue? And then how do you make it a priority? I keep saying, because I'm in a vice president role, we need this as a priority. We need to put this at the top of the list of your queue, and you need to make this happen. So thinking about how you can do that, or how do you find allies or others that are within the executive team that can help you do that. The other question that always comes up, well, who's paying for this? Who's paying for that video? Who's paying? Is student affairs going to cover the cost for that? In my opinion, it's an institutional issue. It should be addressed institutionally. So there needs to be some allocation in the budget process, whether that's through your strategic planning process or when you go into the budget process, that literally has some commitment towards addressing training and professional development necessary for faculty, staff, and students. I added this quickly because we had a conversation earlier about translation services. Who pays for those services? So we're not talking about needing interpreters for an individual who needs that, who's deaf. We're talking about translators who are available to help us through that process. And I heard earlier the mention that it takes a long time to go through this process. So are we going to have internal translators that you have within your institution, not students, employees who are assisting with that, or are we covering costs for an external translator to assist us through that whole process? What does that look like? Do you have SAFE funding or gap funding? These are things that are important for students to stay enrolled. So is there dollars available through your foundation or other means where students have their electricity covered while they're going through this, or they're not able to work because of the stress they've been under because of the assault? So how do we find funding resources for their books that they might need? Or is there something that they need for childcare so they can come back to actually participate in the hearing or whatever that you're doing with those students in that process? In my opinion, these are the areas, at least on our campus, that we've had to look and assess the staffing needs. More counseling, in regards to disability support services, there's probably some post-traumatic stress and other issues that are associated. How do we provide services and accommodations for students who may need more support in the classroom to be successful? Our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Office is doing lots of great work around training. You heard this morning the military's role and how are we making sure that we're serving through the Veteran Services area information and training necessary. Women's centers, the health centers. And then how are we covering costs for safety rides? How are we covering costs in regards to if a student needs to change classes and withdrawal policies around that? Are there housing alterations? They need to move off campus. So do you have policies around it's okay to move off? We're going to be working with you on that. Do they need a different supervisor? So I would just say in regards to leadership and economic issues, that's all I'm going to say. I think that it's, and I'll end with that because I'm sure that you all would like to be asking questions. Here are some examples of things that I think as leaders we need to be thinking about. Creating a campus-wide response team, whatever that looks like. There may be people that are involved in that we need to stipend. There may be people that are involved in that we need to figure out how they are going to participate in those campus response teams. So it's going to depend on your institution, it's going to depend on the culture of your institution, how people are paid to participate in campus-wide response teams. I think that the leadership needs to do assessments and audits on prevention and response efforts. So we can't just say, okay, you guys have a team, go to it. We need to be auditing and monitoring what's going on and assessing. We need to be providing consistent messaging and branding. And we need to constantly be communicating with the stakeholders. So the two lessons that I've learned as we work through this, one is we need to make a serious commitment as an organization. And that doesn't mean that we just do this through half measures that won't work. We need to be fully committed. We need to have an entire process in place, and we need to be working on that. And then the second lesson that I've learned is really just to focus on the big goal, that this is about helping our students navigate a really stressful situation and time in their lives, and how do they get through the bureaucracy of our process to make sure they're being served directly and that they can continue their goals while they're here.
Any questions for Deb?
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about the campus-wide response team, the goals?
Sure. So currently, we have a system where a faculty member or staff member or student could report into us that there's been an incident. And then there'll be an opportunity for the student to connect with myself or with campus safety, depending on the issue. And then from there, we actually will meet with the student to talk through the student what the process is. And if we need to bring in additional team members, we'll do that through our counseling team, our disability supports team, our housing team. So we're basically providing wraparound services for that student in that process. At the same time, we're also working with the perpetrator on whatever the issue is as well, and making sure they know what's going on separate, and then we follow what we would consider the full investigation process.
So as one of your peer institutions in the WACTC system for community technical colleges, the first thing I did with the new 277-page guide was put it on thumb drive, give it to my president, and say, give this to the AG.
Yeah.
Because we need something from one source, not 34. We don't all need to be creating the same wheel. We all need something from them. How can we be, I'm relatively new in the community technical college system with only 3.5 years. How do we get something that federally unfunded mandates that touch all levels of compliance in all different areas from the AG's office? I mean, we're not getting it from the Fed. We have to create it.
So you're talking about a template for policy?
Olympic.
Is that what you're talking about, a
Yeah.
template for policy?
Yeah, so
There is one.
I know we're all different. You know, I know we're all different. And we're all gonna have unique little nuances. But you know, the long storied tradition of everybody just forging their own seems to be ridiculously wasteful to me.
There is a model policy. I'd be happy to send it to you. And it could be just that you didn't have, your vice president wasn't there at the time that it came forward. So I think you have a new vice president?
Yeah, several.
Okay, well, there you go. I can send you, there is a model template, and then you add to that template. So you make it for your culture, but it is a template that came from the AGO's office.
Yeah, because we're doing the same thing with campus safety. So we're doing the same thing with campus safety things within our peer group, trying to make sure we've got some boilerplate templates to make things easier, because compliance is getting more stringent, more complicated, and we're getting less resources.
Yeah. So you just want to make sure you're aligned with your student affairs and your HR department when safety's kind of creating something, right? Because the policy.
Right, when we get an HR director.
Okay.
Yeah.
So going off of what you're saying, starting from Highline, how do you do the entry point? The point of entry is just there's so many for community colleges, and part of it is education and training.
Yeah.
So how are you doing it at Green River?
Are you talking about for the students, or are
yeah,
you talking?
because the policies are written for 4 years.
Yeah.
And we're really struggling in terms of getting something together. And so, echoing what you're saying is how can we use the same model and share that among the 34 of us?
Well, we have, at the current time, we've already sent our script for the video that we're creating to the AGO's office. So we received feedback that was thumbs up, they really liked it. So now we're working on the actual video. And then from there, I mean, I'm happy to share that with any of the campuses that are interested in having that as a tool. We've struggled with, do we make it mandatory or not? And at what point do we implement that in the system? So is that at the point the student comes in for the very first time to the Welcome Center? Is that at the point that they actually register for classes? Right. Do we do that during orientation? There's lots of dialogue still. We have not yet figured out exactly when we're going to do that. But for winter quarter, we are they moved to spring. They begged me, could we wait till spring quarter? So for spring quarter, we're going to facilitate a pilot with 200 students. Is that what we said?
Yes, I think we are facilitating a pilot. It is probably going to be at more than 200 students. Right
Even
now,
better. So.
Right now we're doing, we have some faculty on board that are going to be putting part of the curriculum in their first year. It's not a first year experience class, but it's
their college success course.
This quarter, just a couple hours, and then we're going to add that on.
And at Oregon, it's mandatory for all of our first-year students and transfers under 21. They have to complete it's a 4-hour module of Apple EDU in Haven, and Haven has the sexual assault component. So they all have to complete that. And if they don't complete that, then they can't register for classes the next quarter.
So there's lots of mixed feelings about doing that. So, but I think that it will be something. After we pilot, we'll be able to make some better recommendations.
Maybe go mandatory.
Yeah. Someone else had their hand up.
Forget my question.
Great. Well, thank you for your attention and appreciate it very much.
Thank you.